Good afternoon, and welcome to MBA620, Managing Human Resources at the University of Findlay. I welcome you all to class and look forward to having you this semester as we proceed through the class. As you know, our online classes are 8 weeks long and they move relatively quickly, and we get started right out of the gate. So I'm sure you've adequately prepared in reviewing the website and maybe looking at some of the assignments in the nature of the class. If you haven't, you should do that pretty soon. This is a project or an assignment-driven class. That is, you have, generally speaking, weekly assignments to do that are individual in nature. Now, let me start out first by talking a little bit about the class. Managing human resources. In an organization, typically once an organization reaches a certain size, it formalizes the human resource function. Sometimes in smaller organizations, there won't be an HR department, but of course, those HR responsibilities have to be fulfilled by someone. And it turns out, whether it's a large or a small organization, or whether or not there is a formal HR department or not, it turns out managers of the various functions, in addition to their functional responsibilities of being, say, an accountant or a financial manager or an operations manager or an IT manager, in addition to having technical expertise there, you also have to have leadership skills, and you also have to perform some of the HR functions that are classic to an organization. As we know, if there's a saying that says if you hire the wrong people, you get the wrong performance. And so selection is a really important part of human resources. Making sure there's a good match between the personality of an individual and the culture of the organization is really critical. The cost of bad hiring decisions is significant, not just the direct costs, but also the indirect costs. When you throw in the indirect costs of bad hiring decisions, those costs magnify even more so. But an HR department isn't going to hire your accountant if you're the accounting manager, or your marketing specialist if you're the marketing manager. They're going to assist you, but you really drive the process and you make the final decision. So it's important for you to understand the recruitment and selection process. Also, compensation decisions. You'll have guidelines by the organization, but you need to understand the basics of compensation design and management so that when you make offers to the people that you want to hire, they are in line with organizational policies and with good HR management practices. And so we learn about that. Performance appraisal, another classic HR function, is not done by the HR department typically. It's done by the managers of the functional areas. The HR department may design the system, but its execution is in the hands of the managers of the people in the organization. And you'll also find out that there are alternatives to the classic approach to HR management, where it's a top-down approach where the manager evaluates the subordinate. There are other approaches, 360-degree performance evaluations, where people that work with you both within and outside of the organization have input into your performance evaluation. And so you learn about the different approaches to performance appraisal and how those are managed, executed, and carried out as well. And so this class teaches HR from the perspective that all of you either are or will be managers at some point in the future. And in addition to those technical skills that you need to have in your domain area, you need to understand the basics of human resource management. Those are crucial to successful management careers. And since many of you aren't likely to be professional HR managers as a career, many of you will spend some time in an HR department. In fact, some organizations that have career tracks for high-level executives, they will rotate you through various positions in the organization that the organization deems critical to success. And one of those, in strategically minded, well-functioning organizations, is in fact the human resource department. So while you may not be a 20-year HR manager in an organization, you may have a 1 to 2 year, 18 to 24-month assignment in an HR department as an HR manager to learn the HR aspects of the organization. And then you'd rotate through other operational positions within the organization as a career track in the organization. But most of you will be managers in non-HR oriented functions, but you will need to be successful at executing human resource management. And that's what we get at in this class, understanding some of those key HR functions and how to operationally manage them successfully and effectively. We will also look at some of the legal aspects of human resources. Employment law and employment law compliance is significant. Legal lawsuits against organizations, especially in the area of employment, can be very costly, and at minimum, an organization needs to be legally compliant with a host of laws and regulations regarding the employment transaction. And you need to be aware of those. Most people that are in HR and study HR as a profession are pretty well aware of those things. And it's not that they don't make mistakes, but oftentimes when companies find themselves in legal trouble from an employment perspective, oftentimes those errors in judgment making calls that turn out to be illegal are based on a manager in a non-HR position being sued for something. For example, maybe in an interview asking illegal questions, not because it doesn't sound like, oh, I should be able to ask someone some of these questions, but it turns out there are many things you can't ask in a selection interview. And you're probably thinking, well, yes, of course, we can't ask how old you are and things like that, but it drills down much deeper than that. And so we want to make sure that you understand the basics of compliance with HR law. You don't need to be a lawyer to be an HR manager. That's oftentimes why big corporations have legal departments. Okay, if you're an HR manager and you get into a sticky issue, or even if you're a marketing manager, you go to the legal department, your counsel, corporate counsel, and get opinions from them. But you don't want to be running to them every time you have to make a decision. So understanding the basics of employment law really is pretty important and cuts across all aspects of organizational management. So we look at those as we go through the class. Employment law is covered both in a chapter of the textbook, and then legal issues are embedded virtually in every chapter of the textbook as you read through it. But there is a dedicated chapter, and then there are legal implications of almost every aspect of HR. For instance, the Fair Labor Standards Act, which has to do with compensation, is covered in more detail in the compensation chapter than it is in the chapter on legal aspects of employment, which covers mostly EEOC and affirmative action type issues. But we will cover legal issues both as a component, as a weekly assignment, and then they will be embedded throughout the class as well. Another important aspect of being a manager in an organization, especially as you move up the chain of command, is understanding labor and employment, not only within your company, but also within the industry that you operate in, the competitive environment that you operate in. Those are very important. So, anyhow, I look forward to having you in class this semester, and we begin Monday. And you will have weekly assignments, and you will not want to neglect waiting till week 6 or 7 to start your team-based project, or you'll find yourself kind of back-jammed. So you'll see how the course is laid out. Please feel free to peruse everything, get your assignments done on time, and I look forward to having you in class this semester. Good luck and take care.